Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with me on my show. There's lots to talk about, and there's lots of discussions that we have because this is about your opportunity to make comments, for me to respond to them, to talk amongst yourselves about the things that you think are important right at this particular point in time. Now, just a couple of things, housekeeping things I want to take care of. Number one is someone did complain about the number of advertisements you were getting on YouTube, and that was because I had a certain setting that automated advertisements. I've actually decided to make this all my live feeds monetized, so not getting paid for any of the live feeds that I do, unless you do a super chat and pay me directly. That's the only way by which there'll be any payment to me during my live chats, because I think it's important that you don't be as interrupted as you could be with regard to the advertisements that YouTube care to insert amongst my live feed. So hopefully that's the case. And if there's anything that if you're getting advertisements and they're continued coming through, as I will, just let me know. But the other way by which you can avoid all your advertisements on YouTube is simply to have a subscription to YouTube and pay the $10, whatever it is per month, if you so desire. If not, I've done what I can in order to minimize those advertisements. And can I just say that I do have a poll up, which has the Trump administration made the world a safer place? Please insert your response. I have at the moment 86% say no, 14% say yes. If you believe that you're part of that 14%, I'd be most interested to know what it is you think that Trump is doing that is benefiting the world, because I'm a bit at a loss as to be able to decipher exactly what that might mean. So let me know. The other thing too is that it's very important for you to contribute to this conversation. There's already a number of people online. I really do appreciate it. So thank you very much. The first thing I want to say is that I've got a range of subjects to talk about. I don't have to talk about them. People are already putting up some responses around all of this. I do think I've got one here. International and domestic terrorists is what one. I think Trump will cause World War III, and fascism belongs in Europe. Well, probably did in the late 1930s through to 45. But yes, I tend to agree. So put up your comments there. There's a number of things that are concerning me. I was trying to do a post earlier on today, trying to work out what it is that I need to say. Now, I need you to understand that sometimes just making a calculation as to what to talk about and being enthusiastic enough to talk about that to make the post appealing is an issue for me from time to time, because there's so much happening and it's really difficult sometimes to put, and I don't like to do the angry podcaster type posts. I try to avoid them as best as I can, where people get up and they swear about Trump and what's happening in the world and so on. I don't necessarily want to do that, but I do want to be able to say just this one thing about Donald Trump and what's happening in the world, and that is that I think the world is stuffed. That the way that we're responding around the world, and this is my key issue, incidentally, the way the world is responding to Trump is so unhelpful and will bring about, as someone said, World War III, possibly, but it will bring about the sense that there is no thing that this man can do or that the United States can do that anybody will make a stand against, that we are compliant in our silence about how we deal with Donald Trump. And I posted a post on this a couple of days ago about how everybody in the world, generally, not everybody, but generally speaking, people around the world object to what Trump is doing, whether that be in Ukraine, whether that be in relationship to his relationship with Netanyahu, and whether that is about Europe, NATO, and what he's doing in his own country in terms of immigration and all the other issues that sit around all of that. Trump himself is a man, and this is my personal opinion, is that Trump has no interest whatsoever in the well-being of human beings, end of story. And we need to understand that. I mean, we can argue, and rightfully so, that Obama and the Bushes and Clintons and everybody else that came preceding all of them, they did what they thought they needed to do to make the world a better place. Now, they failed on so many places because there is this terrible notion that the United States has become the world's police person. Now, that's something I grew up with when I went to school, that I was told that. Many of you probably told that as well. And it was because we allowed the United States to, to create NATO, to have the industrial power, we couldn't stop them necessarily from having military power, but we certainly acquiesced to them because we perceived that their power was greater than anybody else's. The reality is that is no longer the case. That as the world combined, that is particularly I'm talking about Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, we are as powerful as the United States, not just in terms of potential military power, but in terms of economic and buying purchase as well. We are, as a bloc, we are significant, and that it takes one politician in that bloc to make a significant stand against Donald Trump, for there to be any difference whatsoever, for there to be a shift in the way the world starts to view him. Because I'm quite convinced that behind closed doors, all politicians around the world are saying that the man's a jerk, that he's not doing anything which is going to enhance mankind. In fact, what he's doing is going to destroy the world order, and that whatever that might mean, that is the moral integrity that most countries have in relation to how they should conduct themselves in the world, that has gone. Donald Trump is not interested in the world being a better place. He's only interested in the world being a better place for him, his cronies, and the oligarchs who control him. The man has no real intelligence whatsoever, no understanding about things geopolitically. He is ignorant in so many areas. And we must remember that the people that wrote the 2025 proposal, whatever, I forgot what it's called now, but whoever wrote that is in control of whatever Trump is doing. And, we've got people around Trump who tell him what he needs to know, which is for their benefit rather than anybody else's. And Stephen Miller is a prime example of that. So Stephen Miller is like, to me, is like the leader of the SS in the Nazi regime. He's the most evil, disgusting individual you could ever meet. He's like Goebbels. He is so full of hate and quest for power that when you listen to him, you can see the hate and the resentment and the need to have to control everything, that it almost sends a shiver up your spine to think that this is the man sitting behind Donald Trump telling him how the world should be run. It should make us all afraid. Stephen Miller is a disgusting, disgraceful human being. And there are others around him. Marco Rubio, for example, used to present as a reasonable individual. And he was a man who certainly spoke out against Trump when Trump was running for election in 2016. And then now he is his primary sycophant. It is beyond belief how these people can turn in the way that they have simply because they quit their quest for power. It's disgraceful. And now we have, I'm going to take you to another issue. Now we have in Minneapolis, we have the killing of a white woman who was doing a three-point turn to get away from ICE operators. And in doing so, she got shot in the face 3 times. And I'm not going to play the video for you. There are plenty of that videos all over the internet. And I guess what it tells us is the evilness that is the Trump administration in its effort to remove people from the United States whom they don't like, primarily because of where they come from and the colour of their skin. The irony is, in this case, they killed an American citizen who happens to be white, a 37-year-old woman who has got a single parent because she lost her husband a few years back. And she's killed simply because an ICE agent had no sense of what he was doing. And that, there are questionable concerns around how they get trained and a whole lot of other things. So I'll just take the article which I have here, which is in the Atlantic, and we'll talk about this for a bit, because I think it's important to highlight how damaging some of the behaviours are. Because this incident, in fact, in Minneapolis is another George Floyd moment when the United States is going to erupt. And I believe right at this point in time in Minneapolis, there are demonstrations being held against what this ICE agent did. And the other thing about this ICE agent is that he was whisked away straight after the incident and has been flown into state. At what point for American people will there be justice for this woman when the perpetrator of this has been flown out of the state, and who knows, maybe even out of the country, so he'll never be found again. And why Kristi Noem is saying that the woman who was in the car was a terrorist, and when you watch the video, you see that's just not the case. And I suppose this is the other concern. I'll come back to the item in a moment. This comes back to the primary issue here, is that even before our very eyes, we can see what is happening. We are gaslit by this administration about almost everything. If it doesn't fit with their narrative, it's wrong, it's terrorism, it's the violent left, it's all these excuses under the sun. They can never do anything wrong according to them. An interesting sideline to all of this is that, according to some recent reporting, the administration has changed the narrative in relation to what happened in January the 6th, 2020. And they've changed this narrative to read something like whenever it was. They've changed the narrative so that they're blaming the officers who were at the who were trying to protect the Congress at the time. They've blamed them for what happened. They've blamed the Vice President Pence. They've blamed Pence for being a coward and a traitor, and they've changed the narrative. So I know it seems like a relatively insignificant issue for us, but the reality is that if you have an administration who does all those things, who denies the truth, even though we can see it with our own eyes, and can they be trusted? Can we trust them around absolutely anything? So one of the other questions, of course, which I'm pondering at the moment, is whether or not NATO's dead. Because can we trust the United States to do anything that is reasonable? So back to that article in the Atlantic. When a federal immigration agent shot and killed a woman in Minneapolis today, the details were fresh, but the story was familiar. Once again, a law enforcement officer had fired into a moving vehicle, even though experts on use of force and many agencies' rules prohibit or discourage the practice as dangerous and ineffective. The fact of the Minneapolis shooting is still emerging, but bystanders' videos and eyewitness accounts provide some sense of what happened. Federal agents are in Minnesota as part of an enforcement push as the Trump administration focuses on welfare fraud among Somali immigrants in the state. Video shows bystanders watching and heckling federal agents. A truck with flashing lights pulls up. The driver and second agent jump out and rapidly approach a burgundy SUV blocking the road, and the driver appears to tell a woman to get out of a car. The SUV reverses briefly, then starts to move forward. So it's doing a 3-point turn. The third officer then fires several shots through the window, and the car veers away before crashing. So this is another example of what I call a rogue government. This is something that one would expect, oh my God, in Venezuela. This is something that I think we all need to be particularly mindful of. So let me know what you think about that particular event, because I think it's troubling and a concern for everyone. Sorry, I just got someone else who feeds me back the responses from my chat, so I appreciate that as well. Right, so they're telling lies about January the 6th, and so it goes on. So my point is that if you can't, like, for those of you that are Australian, and I think most of the people on this on my conversation are, could you imagine, for example, if in the Bondi massacre, a whole lot of a whole lot of misinformation was put out about the massacre. Someone sent me a video actually not long ago. See whether that person's on board. No, they're not, thank God. Someone sent me a conspiracy theorist video on the Bondi massacre as being sort of like a red flag event, and it was just so weird with some of the suggestions that went in this video. If you can imagine that someone said that these were actors, that they were not really, there weren't really people shot, and there weren't really people that were injured. There's no evidence to suggest any of that, and so on, and that Ahmed, the hero of the day, was in fact a bloke by the name of David Cohen, who was what they say he was? He was an IDF agent. So that was the thrust of this video this person sent me. It's absolute bullshit. But could you imagine for a moment if the government chose to support those sorts of ideas in relation to the Bondi massacre? What an outcry there would be in Australia. The government would be gone. That would be it. It could not survive. But in the United States, for some bizarre reason, something I don't understand, the government can put out sort of conspiracy theories and crap, and those people that want to support them do. I don't understand that one bit. I don't understand how that could possibly happen and why it would happen, because it could not happen in this country, I don't think. I don't know whether you agree with me on that, but there are conspiracy theorists in this world. I get that as well, but you don't need to lie in order to support a particular theory that you have. You can, if you've made a mistake, in my view, the best politicians, of which there are very few, I hasten to add, but if you make a mistake, you admit to your mistake and then you move on. And I just wanted to come back to what was happening in Minneapolis. An initial statement by Tricia McLaughlin. This is what I mean. This is the distortion. The spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security appeared to be false in most of its key details, including claiming that violent rioters. If you saw the scene, there are a few people there. There weren't violent rioters at all. Were at the scene and alleged that the driver had weaponised her vehicle, intending to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them. That wasn't the case. You could see that from the video. That was definitely not the case. The available footage suggests that the driver may instead have been driving to flee. Many DHS claims about incidents between civilians and agents have been misleading or plainly false, and the Trump administration has sought spurious charges against anti-ICE protesters. And my point is, and I'm going to sit by it no matter what, is if that would not happen and could not happen in Australia. There is no doubt about it. So just carrying the story further forward, and then I'll move on to something else. The woman who city police said was not a target of an immigration operation was shot in the car in front of a family member during its traffic stop in a snowy residential neighbourhood south of downtown Minneapolis, said Tina Smith. The New York Times identified the woman as Renee Nicole Good. This is her, beautiful young woman. She's now dead. I just don't understand. But only in America, or is it only in America? The deadly incident has fueled a national debate over Trump's efforts to send heavily armed federal agents into US cities in his push for mass deportations, with operations ramping up last year with Chicago and Los Angeles. Within hours, the Minneapolis killing ignited protests as far away as New York City, and rightfully so. America, it's stuffed. And it goes on to talk about the daughter and what a wonderful person she was. So I guess my point in concluding on this issue is, what do we do? What can we do when a government behaves in such atrocious ways? When there are people like Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem and others who clearly are attempting to distort any event to make it fit with the narrative that they want to express. What is it that we could do? Could that happen in Australia? That's my first question. And secondly, if it did, how would we in this country go about combating it? Because I think the most significant thing we could ever do in dealing with issues like this is to simply, at the next election, get rid of the bastards who are spreading the tales. And we have a few of those bastards here in Australia. Josh Frydenberg would have to be one of those, because Josh has decided that for whatever reason, I've got an article about him in just a moment. I think I'm trying to find it. And maybe I haven't got it here. No, I haven't. But there is an article where Josh Frydenberg is talking about the Royal Commission, and there's an effort within from the right wing of politics to have not only have the Royal Commission, which it seems to me now that Albonese may acquiesce to, but it is also important to understand that the right wing are going to try and stipulate the person that they believe should be running this commission. And the person that the government is considering is seen by the right wing as being too partisan. And the irony, I think, also around that is that no matter who they choose, whoever they choose, they will be partisan because of their choice. That the right will choose somebody or want somebody that is going to be, a Zionist maybe. Maybe they'll even suggest Gillian Segal as being the person, heaven forbid. But or maybe they'll choose someone that's a part of the Christian right in order to advocate for their particular agenda. So Josh Frydenberg, who I think is an appalling individual, will endeavour to politicise and continue, and this is the problem, they'll continue to politicise the issue around Bondi and the Royal Commission as often as they can. It will be shameful as to what they do. So this is an article written in the Sydney Morning Herald in relation to this particular issue. So a former High Court Justice in frame to lead Bondi Royal Commission. A former High Court Justice previously tapped by Labor to probe Scott Morrison's multiple ministries is in the frame to lead the widely expected Federal Royal Commission into the Bondi killings. The person they're talking about is Virginia Bell. Now, Virginia probably got on the wrong side, or offside, I should say, with the right wing, because she was the one chosen to investigate the 5 ministries that Morrison chose to adopt, and of course she's not going to be the right person for this, because she was standing, as it would perceive, against the Morrison government and dear old Scotty at this particular point. The potential appointment of Virginia Bell has been flagged by senior Labor figures in recent days and has already prompted pushback from some Jewish leaders in New South Wales, Bell's home state, over their belief she might be too left-leaning. Now, I want to know, who decides on whether someone's left-leaning or right-leaning? Well, I guess the right decide as to whether you're left-leaning or not, even though you might be totally impartial. A claim the government and Bell's backers in the legal fraternity will challenge. Of course they will. The private worry expressed by Jewish leaders has complicated the choice for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as he and his ministers work out details of a national probe he has resisted for weeks. So, are they going to go with it? We don't know yet. But it is likely that at some time Albo will give in to all the pressure and choose it. And then, of course, what becomes the issue then? Well, that's another issue. Because primarily, the big problem is going to be what sits within the recommendations to run and to manage and to investigate of a Royal Commission. So how will that look like? What will that take shape? What will be all the 100-odd areas in which the Royal Commission is supposed to investigate? There'll be a big debate over what should be in, what should be out, what isn't in and should be in. And so it'll just continue on and on and on. And this is what really frustrates me, is that the government is the ones, and Albanese, to his credit, has said that if they're going to investigate any of this, I'm going to, the conditions of the Royal Commission, I am going to ask everybody. So even though he will have a conversation with Susan Lee, Little Proud and others, none of those other people he consults will ever be satisfied with whatever Albanese presents, because the narrative has to always be in relation to Anthony Albanese, and you see this from the right-wing media all the time, is that he's weak and indecisive. That's the argument, and that's the narrative. So they're going to push that regardless of whatever is the outcome. There will always be someone who will object. Opposition Home Affairs spokesman John O'Dunham on Thursday refused to support Bell as a potential pick, saying the opinion of the affected community was most important. It's not for the coalition to say, and it's certainly not for the government just to blindly put forward a name and hope everyone agrees with it, he told ABC Radio. Those leading the commission should be acceptable to the victims' families and the community affected by the event in Bondi. Now, I need to ask you all, because there's a lot of you that are extremely intelligent, and I do mean that in all sincerity, actually. Some of you come up with some amazing ideas and suggestions, but who needs to decide at the end of the day who is going to be who's going to head the Royal Commission, and who's going to be acceptable to the victims' families? So let's think about that. How do victims' families, I guess they've been through a terrible trauma, but how do they decide? How do they decide at the end of the day who is the right person, who isn't? Who's going to influence them in their decisions in relation to who should be the appropriate choice? My guess is that the right wing, the Zionists, those people that support the IDF, those people that don't support the whole of the Jewish community, only a small portion of them, the AGA, for example, those people are going to try and influence the poor old victims in order to get them to speak publicly about who should be on the commission. That is sad, as if they haven't gone through enough as it is to have their names thrown up there, because we're talking about ordinary people who were simply out for a good day on December the 14th. That's all they were doing. They're not politicians. They're not people that are interested in the politics of the day. They were people having a good day. Who knows what occupations or jobs they had or whatever. It's irrelevant. But they're not the ones that necessarily should be choosing who the commissioner should be. And it goes on to say, that is the test, and so once we know that they are satisfied, that would be a good thing. Now, how do they? I don't understand how they work that out. Duniam said he was not questioning Bell's credentials. No, you weren't. Of course, you weren't, or impartiality, but repeated the government should ensure the Jewish community supported any appointment. The Jewish community, when you're talking about Jewish community, one's got to ask, which Jewish community are you talking about? Tell me. Because the Jewish communities are broken up into a number of different segments. There's the Zionists, and those people that believe that there should be no Palestine at all, or some of them believe no Palestinian people at all, and they're full of Islamophobia. And then there's another set of Jewish people in the community who don't like what the IDF are doing. They can differentiate between. They're not self-haters. They're just people who don't like what the IDF are doing. And there's a fair percentage of those people out there as well. They're just not as influential, it seems, as some of these Julian Siegel type people. So who are these people that are going to make these choices? So it goes on to say, Bell declined to comment when contacted by this masthead about the prospect of her appointment for the appointment on Wednesday evening. Several sources familiar with tightly held considerations insist the government, none of whom were willing to speak publicly, said the government was putting Bell forward in confidential talks as a leading option. Was it the primary option? Maybe there are others. The disagreement over Bell is already proving difficult for Albonese. She's just a name, for Christ's sake, popped into a hat. Let's see what other names are there, even as he prepares to yield to a well-organised and wide-ranging campaign to call a Roal Commission. He will face ongoing tests from the Jewish community and other critics to ensure the scope and operation of the probe satisfies the Bondi victims' families and their community leaders. Now, the question is, what could possibly be the outcome if you had a partisan commissioner? Well, I guess a partisan commissioner would lead any questioning in relation to any witnesses down a certain path. That a commissioner with a bias would shut down anyone that they didn't want to hear, that they thought were a danger to the conversation. The article does go on to say Jewish leaders have privately acknowledged they risk blowback from wider community if they appear to be making political attacks against Royal Commissions after the Prime Minister yields. Ain't that the truth? So there might be some blowback if they make political attacks, and hopefully that's true. That once the commissioner is appointed, it's done and dusted. Let's get on with the game. Let's organise. Let's spend a few months trying to organise, what we're going to do about all of this and where we're going to hold it, and who are going to be witnesses and who aren't, and what sort of things will be allowed and what won't be allowed, and so it goes on. It'll be ages before it even starts. After publication of the story, former Coalition Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, oh my God, a top advisor for the Royal Commission, said he opposed Bell's appointment without specifying. Of course he didn't, because in Josh's view, Josh sees himself as and this fascinates me, because Josh sees himself as the leader of the Jewish community I guess not just in this case, because he is Jewish, and all power to him. But he sees this as a political opportunity for his own return to Parliament. Heaven forbid, because my bet is Josh Frydenberg also wants to be leader of the Liberal Party. That is his goal, and he's using every opportunity that he can in order to build a foundation which will establish him as the true leader of the party, primarily because Susan Lee is so weak, basically. He goes on to say the Prime Minister has been told directly by leaders of the Jewish community that they have serious concerns about this appointment, he posted on X. Prime Minister, I appeal to you. I'd like to say to you, Josh isn't listening, but F off, mate. I don't think anybody's really interested in what you say. They can see the game you're playing. Just stop it. This is the time to do the right thing and call a Commonwealth Roal Commission with the appointment of the right commissioner whose leadership will provide the answers and solutions our country urgently needs. I think what Josh might like is for him to be appointed as the commissioner. Wouldn't that be a wonderful turnaround? I don't know Josh's background, so I can't really say, but he's certainly never been a judge. He's never been a Supreme Judge. He's never been part of the High Court. So who knows what his credentials actually are. So where this is going, we still do not know. We're going to find ourselves in a situation, I think, where we're going to debating the terms of reference with regard to this. We're going to be debating who in the hell they've appointed and why. We're going to have the AGA and other aspects of the Jewish community all up in arms about it, no matter who it is. And it's just going to be inflamed, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Now, I just need to remind everybody, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications. As I said earlier, if you just caught up with it, I've turned off the automated monetization so that hopefully you're not getting a lot of advertisements, which someone complained to me about the other day. And just while I'm having a brief break, I want to say that someone sent me a post that, they put it on the comment section, which I found very helpful. So it's someone who criticises me all the time and just hates me, basically. But they did say, they did put up a post. And if someone sends me a link to something, as this other person did around this conspiracy theory ship, I'll always have a look at it. And this particular person sent me a post, and I looked at it. It's a very well presented YouTube video, and I want to thank them for it because it did give me information I didn't have before. Now, I need to say this. I need to be clear about this. I am not a historian. I am not an academic. I'll leave that up to my wife. I am simply a social worker with nearly 4 decades of experience working as a social worker. My background is helping people to deal with issues in their lives so that they could lead better lives. So I don't tend to, even though in this podcast I kind of look at the macro version of politics and other things, but my specialty is working at the micro level. And primarily what I want to do when I work with people is to better understand where you've come from, why you think the things that you do, and what informs you about the belief system that you've got that causes certain behaviours. That's been my thing. And so when people tell me that I've got something wrong, and you can provide me with an example where I've got something wrong, I will look it up. But most of what I say is simply my opinion based as a social worker, not a historian, not an academic, just as a social worker with a set of values and principles that I believe are important to running my life and in the past helping people to manage theirs. That is what I do. So please be clear. I'm not having a go at you if you had a go at me, but if you're going to tell me something that I don't know and you show me evidence to support that I might be wrong or that there's another way of viewing things, I'm more than happy to look at it. It's like the guy that presented me with, and I can't remember his name, so I'm not going to do much justice to this, but someone presented me with an historian to look at. And I looked at the videos. They were boring as shit, I can tell you that now. And they weren't all that substantive, even though it was a right-wing conservative. When I looked him up, he was a right-wing conservative academic. And he had some valuable things to say, I have no doubt. But I can also look to other, and I've got them on my YouTube feed. I've also got some other people who are progressive historians who see and filter history through a completely different perspective. Some of the things this guy said I would agree with, but his overall perspective was through the conservative framework, which isn't mine and isn't those of other people that are historians. So, it's like looking at economics. You get an economist who will say certain things, and then you find another economist who has a different way of viewing the world. They will see the world completely differently. So just wanted to make that differentiation so that people understand that my view is not the only view. I understand that as well. There are other views. I will look at them if you let me know where I need to look. It's as simple as that. Now, I want to get to an issue in relation to Greenland because this is where we're heading, and this is the shit around NATO and whether and in relation to has the Trump administration made the world a safer place? At the moment, we're at 95% no, 5% yes. So most people in my comment section, and so if you haven't already, please register your vote. That would be helpful. And I'll get through some of the comments. There's a great deal of comments happening, so it's impossible for me to go. And most of you guys, the other day, a whole group of you were talking about dogs for whatever reason. I didn't understand any of that because I couldn't follow it. But have a conversation. This is your opportunity to say what you need to say. I'll try and pick up some of these threads in just a moment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Greenland. So I just someone said some of my favourite people are social workers. I don't, good on you, Ambient, for saying that, but I can assure you there are a lot of people who hate the shit out of us because social workers are known for removing kids. I wasn't one of them, thank God. I was on the other side of the fence. But, okay, talk about Greenland. Got to stop getting myself distracted. The issue is, does the United States have the right to take over a sovereign country? Forget about Venezuela right at the moment because they didn't have the right there either. But Greenland is like diametrically opposite. In fact, it is true that the United States had 16 military sites in Greenland. They now have one. They could ask the Danish government if they could put more on there if they wanted to, and they could. The Danish government isn't necessarily going to restrict what they do on those sites. They can do whatever they like. They can surveil, they can do whatever. They can look for satellites. They can try and figure out whether Russian boats are in the region. They can do whatever they like. All right? So there's no issues around security, which is what Trump is arguing is the problem. And there are rare earths in Greenland, but the thing about Greenland is whatever you want to mine, it's bloody hard. There's lots of ice and snow. So, and a lot of people won't go to Greenland and mine things because it is just so cold and it's so difficult to do and expensive. So the question is, why is Trump fixated on Greenland? And I have a theory. When you look at Greenland on an oval map, Greenland appears to be quite large. Now, it is distorted on the map. It isn't as big as it appears to the native eye. It's smaller than that, but still a reasonable size. So So someone drew a comparison to one of the states in the United States. I can't remember which one now. Which it is about the same size as, which doesn't appear very big when you look at the state in the US. So, but it is a fair-sized land, fair enough. It has 30,000 people on it. They are all Danish citizens. It has been a sovereign state of Denmark for 300 years. So when I hear Donald Trump and others talk about it kind of like being a recent thing, it isn't. Not at all. Historically, Greenland's been a part of Denmark when the Danes were busily carrying their Viking ships or whatever it was across the ocean and discovering other lands. So, so why is it that Donald Trump is interested in Greenland? My theory is that because he sees it on the map and he thinks it's very big, and that he wants America to become like Britain were in the 16th, 17th century. He wants America to become the imperialistic nation of the world. And anything which, and I didn't know this before, but apparently the Western Hemisphere is anything that sits down from the Arctic down through Canada, America, North America and South America. That is, I didn't know this, the Western Hemisphere, apparently. And I don't know if any of you knew that as well, but it was a revelation. Now, he wants to govern as much as the Western Hemisphere as he can. And so he's taking his mind back to the time when they bought Alaska. And someone suggested that they could probably buy Greenland if they offered the right amount of money. But he doesn't want to do that because the thing for Trump is he wants to feel powerful. He wants to feel in control. He wants to set his army up so that he can go and invade a country and then say, this is what I plan to do because we have this all might and this power, and might is great, and we could take over Greenland. This is what he wants to do. Now, the issue around this is how NATO will respond, because Article 2 says, if one particular country is confronted or is attempted to be taken over by another, then all of the European nations get together and they fight it. In this particular case, it's one of their own. So I don't know how that fits. But I guess if anybody takes over another country, what will happen? Well, Europe's spineless bunch of bastards, to be quite honest. Macron, Merz, Starmer, they're all gutless individuals, and they won't stand up for the only country that has made any sort of stand against the United States has been Denmark itself. Their Prime Minister, who's a fabulous woman, she actually made some statements about the inappropriateness of even thinking of taking over Greenland. But no one's ever stepped back and backed her up around any of that because they're spineless. In the same way Albonese is spineless by not standing up to the United States around AUKUS and around all those bases they have in Australia and so on. So Mr. Pig says Greenland is more than happy to take on foreign business involvement. The government is more than generous, and that's true as I understand it. So, I just want to thank you. Oh, don't know what that's doing about that. Wrong one. Try this again. Take on foreign business involvement. The government is more than generous. Nice picture of you, Mr. Pig, with your birds. That's exciting. So, yes, couldn't agree more. So I just want to take us to this article. The crisis over Greenland is here. The White House is serious about its desire to claim and control Greenland. European officials believe the threat of a unilateral move is all too real. What in the hell are you doing about it? A year ago, it may have seemed a passing storm, another bit of bluster in the whirring maelstream of President Donald Trump's first month back in office. But now, no one sees it as a joke. The White House is serious about its desire to claim and control Greenland, the self-governing Arctic island that is part of the sovereign territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, a NATO ally. And Europe officials believe the threat of some unilateral move is all too real. Over the weekend, after a brazen raid that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Trump and his lieutenants, Trump and his bunch of cronies asserted their view that the Western Hemisphere is ours, a zone where US security interests are paramount. That included, Trump insisted without prompting, the need for Greenland to be under an American control. Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place, Trump said. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security, and Denmark is not going to be able to do it. Now, I need someone who's got some in-depth understanding of all of this to be able to tell me the United States based in Greenland, which they already have one base there of about 6,000 people, I hasten to add. So it's not like they're not there. How having a base in Greenland would ensure that the Russians and the Chinese are not wandering around the straits just between Greenland and Europe. Like, I would suggest that if the United States have a base there, you'll have more Chinese and more Russians, surveilling that in order to keep an eye on the Americans. He says, Trump says, we need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. I think that it will just make, if they took over, it will potentially just make the area more unsecure or insecure. Don't know which word, unsecure, I think is the appropriate language to use. So in a Monday interview on CNN, the White House Deputy Chief, the Goebel of America, the man is the most revolting individual on this planet, who is just evil personified, Stephen Miller, didn't back away from that message. The United States ought to have Greenland as part of our overall security apparatus, he insisted. While questioning the basis of Denmark's sovereignty over the territory, he mocked the idea of the European nation putting up any resistance. Nobody is going to fight the US military over the future of Greenland, Miller said in his Nazi accent. So far, European resistance has come in the form it usually does, carefully worded statements in public and hand-wringing in private. The threat to Europe's west hung over proceedings on Tuesday as European officials tried to mobilise efforts to safeguard the continent's east, ironing out details over future security guarantees to Ukraine. I'll talk about that in a moment. Most of Europe's prominent leaders put out messages pushing back against the idea of an American takeover of Greenland. Right. So let's put a lot of this in perspective. At the same time, Donald Trump's taking over Venezuela, so to speak, because who knows what's going to happen there. There's no plan B. You take out Maduro, that's it, end of story. So, and you're not going to get the oil because that'll take forever to manufacture and so on. So the infrastructure is so fucked that you're not going to do anything. So, okay, apart from all of that, the Europeans are upset because of what might happen in Greenland. At the same time, though, there's a meeting happening with Kushner and Wolkoff and others around Ukraine. So Europe needs, supposedly, does it really? I don't know. But basically, Europe needs the security that is provided by the United States in Ukraine. And to end that war, that is required. At the same time, that Europe's all getting together as NATO in order to try and negotiate what happens in Ukraine, America is attacking Venezuela and suggesting that they're going to take over Greenland. That's the way it's gone. None of this, I'll tell you what, I don't know much about international politics or diplomacy in particular. But I can tell you there's something incongruent about the fact that they're trying to do this about Ukraine, trying to end that war, while Trump's busily starting wars elsewhere. Right? I don't understand it, don't get it, but there again, neither does Trump nor his administration, because they're a bunch of crazy people. Greenland belongs to its people, a joint statement from the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Britain said. It is for Denmark and Greenland, and them only, to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. And yet there's a creeping realisation that the White House just doesn't give a shit, frankly. The United States under Trump could try to leverage its role in anchoring Ukraine peace talks with concessions from Europe and Denmark on Greenland, suggested The Atlantic. According to Reuters, Trump and his team are intent on acquiring Greenland sometime this term and are exploring options ranging from a purchase of the territory to direct forming a free association agreement with the island, similar to what it has with Palau, where the United States guarantees the tiny Pacific Island nation's defence. Okay, fair enough. I reckon the United States, I reckon that Australia, along with some Asian countries, should try to take over Guam, right? So little island where the United States has got some military forces in the Pacific region, or in the Pacific region, I guess. But we should do what we can to take it over. I think too. The other thing we should do, and someone suggested this in a podcast I saw recently, whereby the United States could be kicked out of all their bases in Europe, and if NATO went, and the US were no longer a party to NATO, then every government in the EU could and should kick the United States out of all of their bases. And the question remains, and I guess this is an important question: is it possible and this is what I've been pondering for some time now. If you've got any ideas, let me know. But is it possible, do you think, for countries to unite against the United States in a way which will cause them to, in a punitive way, which will cause them to understand that they are not as powerful as what they think they are? I think that's a really important question, because together we're more powerful economically, militarily, that is everybody else apart from the United States. And what would happen? Someone says here, I'm scared of the US now more than China. I'm not afraid of China. I think China knows how to play the long game. China's aren't out to take over other countries apart from Taiwan, which has been on the agenda for years. But the other issue for me that I've been thinking about, and someone mentioned this when we first started this podcast, is, are we heading towards World War III? Is that on the cards, do you think? And who would it be between? What an irony it would be if it happens to be between the United States and the rest of the world. Is it likely to be, Russia now seeing some tremendous opportunities in Europe because NATO is fracturing? Is that kind of where we're going? Is it likely to be China seeing opportunities? But I don't see, even though they have a very large military force, don't necessarily see China as an aggressor in that sense. They find economic and sneaky ways to wield power within countries by, providing funds for them to build bridges and wharfs and all that sort of stuff, as they did in Northern Territory here in Australia. So, what is it likely to look like at the end of the day? I think only an idiot would decide to let off an atomic bomb, but there are plenty of them around. So what is the likely outcome? Okay, I think the likely outcome is just a shifting of allegiances. That stop trading in the American dollar to start with. let's find another currency, maybe the euro, that we could start to trade in as opposed to $1, because that keeps them strong. Let's put an embargo against any United States products. So let's not buy their products. Let's sanction them as best as we can. Wherever they hold resources, the oligarchs and others hold resources in Europe and around the world, let's freeze those resources. Let's demonstrate to the United States that you can no longer dictate to us how you think we should be behaving. We should behave in ways which tell you that you're behaving badly, and we should put you over our knees and spank the shit out of you for being just a naughty, naughty person. Maybe that's what we should be doing. And I think that maybe eventually, slowly, that's kind of what will happen. So, any feedback on all of that? There's plenty of comments here. I don't even know where to start. Yep, I agree with that, Glenn. No, that's not the one. I don't know why this is not working now. It's still not working. Try again. I will persevere. This is the one I wanted. The USA no longer care about soft power. No, they don't. USAID is the best example of that. And because they don't care about soft power, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of people will die. There is, just on that very point, I don't know if I've got it here. Find it. That's right. I just want to show that just Glenn, that post just reminded me of another thing I did have up here. It's, Trump pulls out of 66 international bodies, including key UN climate treaty. Part of the soft power is the involvement that the United States and the rest of the world, or the investment, I guess, the rest of the world has in the UN. So Trump pulls out of 60 international bodies, including key UN. The Trump administration will withdraw from dozens of international organisations, including the UN's Population Agency and the UN Treaty that establishes international climate negotiations, as the US further retreats from global cooperation. Donald Trump on Wednesday signed an executive order suspending US support for 66 organisations, agencies and commissions following his instructions for his administration to review participation in and funding for all international organisations, including those affiliated with the UN, according to a White House statement in social media. Most of the targets are UN-related agencies, commissions and advisory panels that focus on climate, labour and other issues that the Trump administration has categorised as catering to diversity and woke initiatives. Because they have. Because Trump's an idiot. I think we can have a discussion, I might do this next time, just on the United Nations itself and its value. There are elements of the United Nations, the soft power that Glenn talked about is important as well, and that the work they do worldwide is extremely significant. But Trump is Trump's putting less and less money into the UN. The United States is the major contributor to the UN, so it's another area in which they need to I think abandon the UN and take it to Geneva, for Christ's sake. Get it out of New York, put it in a place that is far more neutral than the United States, which will be another slap across the wrist to the UN, to the United States rather. So, okay. Let me know, everybody, what you think about all of this stuff we talked. We talked about a lot. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. Do what you need to do. There will be so much more that I will be talking about in the next couple of weeks. So please join me in those conversations. In the meantime, here in Adelaide, it's 40 odd degrees, bloody hot. Thank God for the air conditioning. I feel very grateful for that. Take the 25. Yeah. People saying bye. Thanks, Paul. Bye to you as well. Goodbye, everybody. Take care and make sure that you look after yourselves and the people that you love.